is give them a range of activities, like for instance, do you think you might contact an elected representative? Do you think you might take part in some kind of peaceful march or rally? Do you think you might change your own behaviour? And ask them if they think that they might do this. Do you think that's something that you should do or you'd be interested in doing? And then looking at behaviours themselves, also asking students, have you done this? And then asking for a time frame. Have you done this in the last year, in the last 6 months, in the last month, to get a sense of whether those behaviours are actually taking place or not. So that's the kind of formulation that we're thinking about in terms of the beliefs dimensions, with all the caveats that Tricia mentioned that we kind of don't really know yet, so we're exploring this very tentatively. But a really interesting dimension that came out of our literature scan is about the country-specific nature of much of the research that's happened up until now. And in that sense, we thought what was really important is that when we research what particular groups of students think, we need to be able to contextualise that in where those students are from. And so we're proposing putting together some context summaries. And one of the first issues that we came up with is what's a context? And as you can imagine, 3 geographers, we all started talking about scale, and we all started talking about whether we're talking about nations or states. But also, because of the variety of different countries that we're from, we're conscious that the idea of a nation when you're from Singapore is quite different to the idea of a context when you're working in the US and you've got 50 states and a complex relationship between federal and state-based different contexts. So we're aware of that issue. We haven't solved it yet. But one of the things that we want to do is look at the way that the state or the nation responds to the idea of climate change, whether that's through particular policies, whether it's through particular discourses. And that's in relation to climate change itself. Is it a priority for that particular nation? But also, is education about climate change a priority? And we think that's really important to get some sense of the kind of exposure that young people have had about climate change. And then we can assess to what extent some of their misconceptions are due to, and again I'm generalising for effect, bad teaching, or just generally out there misinformation that's happening out in the world, that they've cottoned onto particular ideas that they're not sure about. So in terms of previous exposure, we're looking for the place of climate change within the curriculum. We're looking about what that means, what that kind of education about climate change might look like and how it's formulated, where it sits, whether it's in science, social science, geography, etc. We're looking about how the media generally portrays climate change and whether that's a significant issue. And also back to this terribly complex notion of society and what that means and how society as a response reacts. And again, I'll give you a very specific example of this about society. One of the pieces of research that we read that was based in the United States said the biggest chance of you being a climate change denier was if you were a conservative white male. Now, we may ask questions about whether what their particular ethnicity or gender may be. I don't think we'll ask them what their politics are, but I think that's really important as well, that we get a sense of the kind of context that these young people are working in. So in our original proposal, we said that what we would do is, based on this literature scan, that we would come up with a pilot survey, a pilot questionnaire. We've kind of changed that a little bit. And what we've decided is that actually we're going to be developing a framework. And this framework will consist of 2 parts. One will be the context summary to give some sense of what that bigger picture is like. But then also, there are the actual survey of students that we initially promised, that would incorporate both the knowledge and the belief dimensions, but probably integrated and brought together. So our next steps are to develop those research instruments, To then we think if we're going to ask people to prepare context summaries, we should probably have a go ourselves and prepare our own context summaries and see if we can actually come up with them, and then go to the pace of pilot testing our survey. That's what we think our immediate next steps are, but we're quite conscious of where we go beyond that. The whole ambition of this project and this proposal was that we would be able to generate something that could be used in a multinational context. And we don't just mean here with our 3 nations. What we mean is actually being able to do something that could have the potential to be much, much bigger. And so one of the things that we're hoping to do is once we've got through this stage and we're kind of happy with our survey and with our framework, then what we're hoping to do is to really extend the invitation and bring it out further, particularly through this network. We think that's incredibly important, but also through some of the other channels and avenues and links that we've got. What we would like, I'm sure what we all would like, is a huge amount of funding where we could go and do an enormous global survey and actually collect this information from many, many countries around the world. But what we're hoping to do is that as soon as we've got this in some kind of state that we're really happy with and we think has got potential, then we really want to look for ways in which we can expand this out further, invite more people to participate, and also to try and extend the reach of this particular piece of research. So that's as far as we've got, I believe. Yes.
So I'll back to the chair.
Yes, please.
Well, let's just show appreciation. That's super impressive, and I've really got to, on behalf of everyone here, congratulate you on the work so far. Extraordinarily challenging area, so I think the discussion could easily get focused on the science and the methods, and we could all become RHD supervisors and treat it so. But I think, given what we were trying to do, I'd like to just deal with some issues of just some nitty-gritties about how much money did we give you?